they're all going to come to you and say they're the best thing that, since sliced bread, as we say here in the UK. But how do you judge? So it was really with that in mind, and that's a sort of an oversimplification, but we set about with a group of colleges and business people setting up the ICB to provide a standard which reflected what a bookkeeper really needed to do to suit education, but to suit the businesses that they were serving. And from that, we set up ICB, and once we started the ball rolling, we realized everybody felt the same.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today I am joined with a very special guest who is speaking with us all the way from the United Kingdom. He is the co-founder of the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers, which has become the largest bookkeeping institute in the world. He is also the chief executive of the ICB and its umbrella organization, ICB Global. Garry Carter, welcome to the podcast.
Great. Hello. I'm really excited to be here. Very nice to speak to you.
Yeah, it's our opportunity to have someone like yourself on the podcast. And I know you've been inspiring, educating, empowering bookkeepers all over the planet. So this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I find that bookkeepers right across the planet are virtually the same sort of people. They have the same passion, the same vision, the same needs, and they're great people, good people to work with.
Absolutely. We love them, and we actually think they're the backbone of small business around the world. So it makes our economy great and thrive, which helps feed families and create jobs. And it's always been a good time, but it's a great time to be a bookkeeper and doing this sorts of work with all that's changing in the industry. But before we get into all of the knowledge that you have, can you first off share a little bit of your background and how you came to be the co-founder of the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers?
Yeah, what happened originally was that I was a businessman. My wife and I ran small businesses, publishing businesses mainly. And we always had great difficulty understanding our figures because neither of us have a financial background. I'm what some people call laughingly an entrepreneur, but basically I get strange ideas in the middle of the night and then go off and do them. And the finances were always something that happened along the way, not necessarily with any sort of planning. And as my businesses started to grow, and I realized occasionally running short of cash and occasionally needing to grow and find more cash or borrow some money or something, I found it very difficult to know who to turn to for this advice. I tried the banks, obviously, tried various firms of accountants, and for most of the firms of accountants, we were probably too small to worry about at that stage. So all they wanted to do really was do our year-end stuff. But I wanted somebody that was going to work with me on a daily, weekly basis. And my wife, like in a lot of small businesses, she used to do that. But she couldn't help me run the business and do the books at the same time. It was very much a shared business. So we employed a bookkeeper. Didn't know how to employ a bookkeeper. Somebody came in and basically she knew how to spell it. And she told us she knew what she was doing. And she made a complete mess of our books to the stage where we owed quite a bit of money to the taxman. We had to get that sorted out, at which point she sort of disappeared, never to be seen again. But meanwhile, my wife and I were under the cosh from the taxman. So we thought, look, this is just not right. We need to be able to find good bookkeepers as a small business person. And I spoke to a lot of small business organizations, and we did, prompted by this, we did a big survey, about 5,000 small businesses. This is way back in 1995, I think it was. And The biggest problem that small businesses had was actually running their business. They knew how to make whatever it was they were making. They knew how to sell whatever it was they wanted to sell. But actually running a business, most of them have never done it before. I mean, I came from a corporate background where I had secretaries and administrators and office people all helping me. I didn't really know what they did. They did a good job. And all of a sudden I was doing the lot, and it didn't work for me. So we looked around to see what was available, and bookkeepers seem to be the obvious people to turn to. But how do you tell who's a good bookkeeper? They're all going to come to you and say they're the best thing that, since sliced bread, as we say here in the UK. But how do you judge? So it was really with that in mind, and that's a sort of an oversimplification, but we set about with a group of colleges and business people setting up the ICB to provide a standard which reflected what a bookkeeper really needed to do to suit education, but to suit the businesses that they were serving. And from that, we set up ICB, and once we started the ball rolling, we realized everybody felt the same. And we were very fortunate that as soon as we put our head above the parapet, everybody said, wow, this is great. Why haven't you been here before? Great, we'll have one of your bookkeepers. And so that's it, basically. That's where we came from.
Wow. And how long now have you been operating around the world?
Well, the company has existed for 20 years. Our first foray outside the United Kingdom was 10 years ago when we moved to Australia. And since then, we've expanded. We're now in 132 countries. Now, that sounds fantastic. To be honest, in some of those countries, in fact, in a lot of those countries, we've got one or two members that have found us on the web. But we do now have 9 offices, and we have agents in a lot of those countries. So it's growing on a daily basis, thankfully. But as I said, when we first started, whichever country you go to, everybody has a good story to tell you about a bookkeeper or a bad story. And they all want bookkeepers to be part of their business. It's very important for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's remarkable, and remarkable growth in terms of being in all of those countries and doing this work. Now, you've worked with thousands of bookkeepers around the world, and of the successful ones, what do you see that they have in common?
I hope you don't mind me saying this, they almost get some sort of weird pleasure from seeing a set of books work. They just love books, they love accounts, and they seem to look at it in a different way to how an accountant looks at it. We have a friend of ours who actually is also a member, and he's one of our trainers. He writes books, and he says that the accountants and bookkeepers use different sides of the brain. And accountants are very much from the creative side of the brain, whereas bookkeepers use the more methodical side of the brain. That makes them sound a little bit boring, but you give a bookkeeper a set of books and they will try and find where every single dollar, cent has gone. And, it sort of turns them on almost. They get very excited about this. And I was across in the Philippines recently, where we have a very large organization. And I was surrounded by this sea of Filipino bookkeepers, and they have competitions with each other to figure out who can do the best set of books. And it's amazing what they all want to do. And in the UK here, we have a lot of bookkeepers. We have about 60 different meetup groups around our country. Not a very big country, but about 60 meetup groups. And I go and talk to them a lot of the time and meet up with them. And it doesn't matter where you go, where you are. It's almost as if you're talking to exactly the same group. They get very excited when they tell you about their latest client that's just walked through the door with a set of books in a mess, and how they've sorted that mess out. And they put them back onto a piece of software or onto whatever it is they're doing, and they just get some enjoyment out of it, which I think is great. They love their job.
Beautiful, and it's really interesting analysis around the different mindsets between the accountants and the bookkeepers. And I've never thought of it that way, but I certainly have noticed working with bookkeepers as well from different parts of the world. They're very much the same, very much have the similar challenges, very much have that similar way of thinking. And it's actually funny because I'm not that type. So if I send an email or if there's a document or anything like that, it's like I better have the I's dotted and the C's crossed because they're going to notice. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And we need that type of skill set in business because as entrepreneurs, their customer are often not like that at all.
Yeah, I mean, the analogy I've used ever since day one really is of the doctor and the nurse. You know, the doctor is the accountant. They go in, they do a very important job. They decide what's wrong. They tell you what's going to be cut out or what's got to be repaired or something or other. But the nurse is the person who gives the day-to-day customer care. They look after the patient. And really, that's what a bookkeeper does. You know, most of our bookkeepers work with firms of accountants, CPAs, chartered accountants, or whatever. And it's not an either or for most businesses. They need both different skills. But, you know, again, going back to the analogy of the doctor and the nurse, if somebody comes out of hospital and they say, well, how was it? They always say, oh, the nurses were wonderful. And that's what businesses say about their bookkeepers. Because I think the way compliance accounting works, it's very much a year-end focus and then looking forward for the next 5-10 years and planning. But there's so much more to running a business that is day in, hour in, week in, whatever it might be. And you know, watching the cash flow is a constant concern for a lot of small businesses. Knowing where their next new customer's coming from, how to keep their current customers happy and everything else. You know, it's a constant. And I think also if you look at most micro and small businesses, normally the entire family is involved. You know, it's not just husband or wife that goes off to work and comes home and says, you know, hello, dear, I'm home. It doesn't happen like that. And I know from running my own small businesses with 2 growing children, you know, our Sunday lunch tables were a constant board meeting almost, you know, and that's how small businesses run. And you need somebody on your side batting at your wicket who understands your business, gets under the skin of what you're doing. And that's a good bookkeeper.
Absolutely right. And I love that. It's a person, what was standing at your wicket? I guess that would be the person in cricket. Managing the overall intricacies of the game. It's great analogy. And I actually watched a video of yours online, and I really liked what you were saying around the difference between accountants and bookkeepers, and it wasn't the nurse analogy, but it was a similar message in that bookkeepers are such an important piece of the business owner's business. Now, how can you have more bookkeepers? Because there are a lot of bookkeepers who actually don't think like that. They think it's just a job, you know, do the books, whatever, and they're not that important, you know, and even the marketplace in some way doesn't look at it that way. What's your advice for bookkeepers to lift up that perception and lift up their own value perception in the market?
It's not an easy message to get across, I have to say. Bookkeepers for many years have been pushed into the background because of the prevalence of accountants and big accounting firms, etc. And, you know, as an outsider, it looks almost as if accountants are the only people that get involved. But once you get to know about bookkeepers and what they do, then that's different. And each year at our conferences right the way around the world, but we have a big conference with about 1,300 bookkeepers in the UK every year in London. And I say to them, look at your business. What is the one thing that your business has that no other business has? And they look at you with a blank look. And I say, it's you. You are what makes your business unique. And you have to realize just how important you are to these businesses. And then I talk about the sort of things that I've just spoken to you about. You know, you'll get the impression I'm very passionate about this. It's just that it's a complete reliance upon the diligence, the effort, the trust of a bookkeeper. And, you know, if an accountant makes an error, it can be sorted, etc. A bookkeeper's different. You know, they've really got to get things right every single time they do something. It's not a percentage gain. You've got to do it all the time, and I think that's important. So I just say to them, look, appreciate what it is that you're doing for small businesses. Look at the work you're taking off the shoulders of that guy and letting that man or that woman go out and just have no concerns about their books. They can just go straight out and they can sell that product harder. They can make more money to bring into the business so that you can look after it, and they can look after their family. They can look after their whole future. A theory, it's not always a popular theory, but the problem, I think, has historically been that a lot of bookkeepers are women, and they have been undervalued in the workplace for many, many years. And I like to think that ICB, we've changed all that. 74% of our members in the world are women, and we're building them up to feel really important. But each year we run the global bookkeeping week, and we get everybody right the way around the world celebrating bookkeeping. And we have a special morning, the Wednesday in the middle of that week, which is Raise a Cup Day. And we get everybody to raise a cup of coffee to bookkeepers and bookkeeping. And it's difficult to know exactly how many people are getting involved, but it's certainly in the hundreds of thousands. But something that came home to me here in the UK, I had a lady came into our offices because we have a coffee morning in our offices. And we all raised a cup at midday and said, cheers to bookkeepers and bookkeeping. And this lady sat next to me and she said, my family come from India. I'm the 4th generation bookkeeper in my family. But I'm the 1st generation that has been allowed to admit that I'm a bookkeeper.
Wow.
And what she explained was that her mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother have all been bookkeepers, but they've looked after the books for the businesses that were run by her grandfather and her uncles and various other things. And in the evening, the men used to hide the books in bags, take them home so that the women could do the books. Then in the morning, get them back into the business before anybody realized that the books had been taken out. And that was for 2 reasons. Firstly, that they didn't want people to know that their wives had done the books, because it would bring shame on their family. Can you imagine that?
It's unbelievable.
One, because a woman should not have a career, and a man would allow his business to be run by a woman. And I sat there and I said, seriously? And she said, yeah. And in some countries around the world, it's still the case.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I thought that was an amazing story. Now, that is no longer the case. I mean, I think people can be bookkeepers and they can hold their heads up. And, they're making good careers, very, very successful businesses. And what used to be a cottage industry with, a man or a woman working by themselves, looking after 2 or 3, 23, whatever clients, we now have members right the way around the world who've got quite growing businesses with 20, 30, even 40 bookkeepers, all as part of a high street office servicing all sorts of companies. And it's fantastic to see it. I'm really pleased. I like to think that ICB has done its fair share of making that happen.
Absolutely. Through education and empowering people to do that, they take risks they may not have taken. And I think that's the power of any association in any industry. If you have a good association, it's a place where you go and you really own yourself, your industry, and that's what builds momentum. So I'm sure the annual conferences and things you do throughout the year contribute to that. And we're big supporters of associations. In fact, the listeners, if you're listening right now, you need to look for an association. And I know we're going to get into, and I've got some questions about, in particular, ICB North America, because that's probably a very growing association for the United States. We have a lot of listeners from the United States. But It's really great to hear, and certainly amazing when you hear that story of that woman, that this is the first generation that they're able to admit that they are the bookkeeper. And I'm sure you're having a big impact on countries that aren't as much developed as some of the first world countries like the UK and Canada and the United States, Australia, but India and the Philippines, and it's certainly needed. Now, from your opinion, there's this conversation of trusted advisor in North America. That's a bit, it's almost a slogan, but I'm wondering what your take is on how you see bookkeepers becoming that trusted advisor. And we talked a little bit about it versus that, just the data entry or document collection specialist.
I think modern technology and particularly artificial intelligence will continually take away a lot of the, what I call mundane work of any professional, but particularly bookkeepers and accountants. It will make life easier. It will make it look better. It'll make it faster to do. But then that relieves our bookkeepers of all the time they've spent doing that and the stuff that took a lot of time, in which the client really never understood why it took so long. And it gives them chance, therefore, to take the figures that are being prepared and instead of just presenting the figures, analyzing the figures. Because it's all very well giving a client a set of books and saying, here we are, this is how well you've done. That's just a very early step in the process as far as I'm concerned, because what they then want to know is, okay, but what do they mean? And most small businesses are run by people who don't know what a set of accounts mean. There's an old adage here that if you've got money in the bank, that equals profit. And if you haven't got a bracket round it, everything must be okay. So we know that that isn't the case. And therefore, I think the bookkeeper can step up to the plate, just to use another analogy, an American one, hopefully, to say, this is your business as it is now. What exactly is it you want to do? Have you thought of, expanding? Are you going to stay where you are? Are you going to sell up? Are you going to leave it for your kids? And they can start the thought process that may eventually be taken over by a firm of accountants or other advisors, but it's got to be an ongoing process. So our bookkeepers already have a very close relationship with those clients. So they've already got a trust. They know each other. They know each other well. And to be honest, when a bookkeeper's done your books for a couple of years, they know every in and out of your business. They know your clients. They know who you're paying, who's paying you. So they've got that business. They know what it's about. So it's the next logical step to say, okay, now I can talk to you about what you could be doing better or what you should be doing differently. Or do you realize you could save 10% here if you did that differently? And I just think it's such a logical step now to become trusted advisors. And in fact, there are a lot of people talking at the moment about becoming trusted advisor, etc., and making a lot of money standing up in front of rooms of people telling them how to do this, etc. But I really think bookkeepers have probably been doing this for many, many years. It's just that perhaps it's a little more formalized now. I don't know what you think, but who better to do this?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's that behavioral characteristic of the bookkeeper that you mentioned earlier, right? They love to find the problems, fix it, and they actually like to tell you about it too. And so it would have been natural that bookkeepers would have been trying even to communicate with owners about the things that they were finding. But I think in the past, perhaps the communication would have been a breakdown because entrepreneurs don't necessarily want to hear all of the intricate details of those problems. So what I think is shifting is that there's a lot of education, a lot of conversation around speaking in language that an entrepreneur or business owner that's have maybe a little bit of a different characteristic from the mindset perspective, and have your communication land. And so you're absolutely right. They have been advisors. The owners that really got that, they are the ones that probably flourished. It's like they have this person that's got their back, that's stepped up the plate, and is like, wait a second, this person is trying to help me be more successful. So it is a big conversation, and it's one that I think is a great conversation. But certainly they're the ones that have been doing it, and with a few tweaks, I think it'll only continue and solidify their place in the industry and in business as being essential to your business. And that's where what I get really excited about. And like yourself, being able to contribute to that in some way through this podcast is to have them be I think we use the guardians of their profit, the guardians of their financial books, and to really own that so that they can set the owner free to do the great things that they were meant to do in their business.
Yeah, I think the things you've got to realize that most entrepreneurs do not want to be told their business isn't doing very well or they're doing things differently. It's like telling them their kids are ugly.
That's right.
But if you've got a relationship already with that client and providing that relationship is a good relationship, you can open up avenues of discussion which are not open to other people who drop into the office and sit opposite the desk and have a chat with somebody on a one-off basis. You've got a hands-on approach. You're part of the team. You're part of the family in many cases. That's what it's about. Now, I'm not suggesting that all bookkeepers are ready to take this on without some sort of help. A lot of bookkeepers still today, I suppose, will say, well, that's not really my place to say that. Well, what we're saying is, but yes, it is. It is definitely your place to say this because you're the only one who can say this. You're the only one that has a complete understanding of that person's business. And part of what ICB has always done is, first of all, we have entry by examination only. So you don't get in unless you do some form of examination, whether it's a studying from day one with no understanding of bookkeeping and you sit a whole range of exams, or you come in and you say, right, I've been a bookkeeper for 20 years. We say, great, prove it. Take an exam, take a test. So we know that everybody reaches our standard, and our standard is pretty high. We have a very high pass mark requirement, and, that's the start. Then we have a code of ethics, and the code of ethics is also pretty restrictive. We want to make sure, for example, they don't go beyond their understanding or their qualification. They can't venture into areas where they have got no expertise because that would be bad for their client. That would be bad for them. It would be bad for our institute's reputation. They need to be of high morals and very ethical in everything they do. This is a very trusted position. And one of the things that we as ICB have been saying for the last 20 years is bookkeeping is not a trade. This is a profession. This is the same as being a chartered accountant or a lawyer or anything else. Because of the trust that's placed in you, the knowledge that you have to have, and the ability you have to make a business successful or completely ruin it if you get things wrong, you have to be professional.
Beautiful. It's fantastic. And that's a great segue into talking about I think what's relatively new is ICB North America. When did you launch in the United States?
We launched about 18 months ago, very much a soft launch. We were very lucky right from day one to have Jan Hago with us. We went across to the States because although we were over here in England, a lot of people were contacting us, having found us on the web and saying, look, we want something like this in the US. There are alternatives. We appreciate that in the US already. But we like what you're saying. We like your upfront message about bookkeepers and standards and becoming part of a community. And they wanted to join our organization. And we said, okay, that's fine. But really, we ought to do something in America so that you become part of an American group of ICB bookkeepers. And that's what we did. So when we came across, first of all, and we toured America talking to various colleges and companies and meetup groups, this name Jan Hago kept coming up over and over again. So we spoke to Jan and said, yeah, this is the woman for us. So she has been taken on to head up our push into the US. It's very early days yet. We have 1,000 or so members, which is minuscule, but it's growing nicely. We'd rather take 1,000 good people than 10,000 not so good people. So, we're a bit restrictive on what we do, but we've been really, really well supported by all of the software companies. They have a different reason for existing. Of course, they just want to sell their software. But actually what we're finding right the way around the world is that what they're saying is, well, look, we'd like some sort of independent verification of us as a software product and us as a software vendor. And therefore, we'd like some of our users, the better ones, to get into membership with you. So, they've been very helpful. And I love America. My family and I holiday there a lot. We've got family links over in America, and you're just so positive. We Brits talk about the weather all the time, and the weather's never particularly good over here. So, it's usually a wet day or something or other. You come to America and there's always a can-do attitude. And you just feel it running through your veins when you're in America and you're talking to business people. They are so excited about what they've got. They want to tell you about their business. And this is what I found with the bookkeepers. They were so pleased that they were looking after American businesses, and they were, making America what it is. They were there. And as you said earlier, the backbone of the American economy. And it's really exciting stuff. As I say, small at the moment, we're growing, but, we've got very, very big plans for America.
I bet. And I can see you doing very well down in America. The economy seems to be getting better just in terms of what is there. It's a very large country, lots of different people, lots of different thought processes. And I think bringing it together in an organization such as yours will be fantastic. And we'll certainly, say her name again that's heading it up. It's
Dan Huego. How?
Jen. Yeah. So we'd love to have her on the podcast as well at some point to talk about what she's doing down there. And tell us a little bit about what's the best way for our listeners to get more information. Go ahead and share that if you've got any kind of promotions on or anything like that. We'd love to hear about it, and the listeners can take action from there.
Yeah, ICB USA is the website. It'll give you all of the information. Jan is spending a lot of her time adapting a lot of the stuff that we've got right the way around the world and turning it into American. But the point about our organization is we have a very strong local focus. The global bit is just the umbrella over the top. And what we want in each of the countries we're in is for the local bookkeepers to feel comfortable that we are dealing with their local needs and not saying, we're not a British organization that's coming in here and saying, hi, you can do whatever you like as long as it's British. That's not what we do. We're saying, right, let's get the American people together, let them run their own organization, make it part of a global group so that, we can talk to our members. We've got members up in Canada. We've got members in Brazil, Mexico, goodness knows where, but then also in the UK. I mean, we're big trading partners with the US, of course. So if you're in the US and you're a member of ICB, you can talk to your fellow ICB members in ICB UK. And it's just this feeling of being part of something big and global and realizing that you're not the only person that thinks this way and works this way.
Yeah.
What you have to remember is that England is about the size of Florida. So, you are a big country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? I would say that the fact that you operate in so many countries, so many offices around the world, what you are experts in is providing an environment for the collaboration of people. And so that's what I think is exciting for the community here in North America is bringing that expertise. And not to say that, the way that bookkeeping is done in the UK and the United States and what people need here versus over there is very different. But I like the model that you've set up, and it's exciting, and we're so excited to have you on the show. I'm sure it's going to be very informative because, getting the word out there is what the stage you're at now is, really getting the word out to the bookkeepers, and a lot of them are listening.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking off air before that you've now got a 22-month-old child.
That's right.
So have we in ICB USA, and I think you were saying that your child was going through a slightly difficult period at the moment. Well, we know we're going to have those as well with ICB. It's not going to be all systems go, go, go always, but the feedback that we're getting from everybody at the moment is just, wow, this is good. This is what we want. We want to be involved. We want to help. How do we get involved? What is it that I can do for you to help ICB get on in this country? And, we're welcoming them with open arms because, I mean, when we started 20 years ago in the UK, bookkeeping hadn't been a particularly well-recognized profession for about 30 years. And a few people said, well, aren't bookkeepers accountants? And then we went through this whole educational thing and we started to move it forward. But the first year, I think we registered about 300 or so in the first year. But by the end of year 5, we were up to 10,000. So, it can happen. And that's what we're talking about. Providing everybody's happy to reach our standard and sing from the same hymn sheet, then I think we're on a winner. And I'd love to think that America could potentially be one of our biggest operations because, you're a big country, but you're a big-hearted country. You're very keen on trade and commerce, and that's just exactly what we're about.
Beautiful. Well, Garry, it has been an incredible pleasure. We hope to have you back and other members of your team back on the show in some point, but thank you very much for being on the show.
My pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me. So I hope to speak to you when we reach our 10,000 members in America.
Absolutely. Well, we'll do our best to help you get there.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cheers. Bye.
That wraps another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast, and what a great episode it was. To learn more about today's guests and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.